ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नामने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामने। नमस्ते सरस्वती गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष भंगुम लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. We are continuing our discussion on the 25th chapter of the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavat. This chapter is entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. This chapter is the beginning of the instructions by Lord Kapila, who is an incarnation of Krishna, the son of Kardama and Devahuti, who in this particular conversation is speaking on the request of his mother Devahuti in order to enlighten her in the subject matter of attaining spiritual perfection. Devahuti was very, very desirous of being delivered from material entanglement, even though the kind and level of material happiness that she experienced when she was blessed by Kardama Muni, the time they spent together, it was practically unimaginable and hardly having any parallel in material world. But even after going through all this, she realized that the sufferings of material nature haven't left her. She could see clearly and have that realization, which is the main driving force for those who want to be free from material existence, which is that actually material world is not a place where one can actually get lasting happiness. And in fact, all promise for happiness is just an enticement to trap one in misery. So she had a very, very deep conviction, and she approached her son Lord Kapila and asked him, requested him, please deliver me by giving me proper knowledge and directions. So in this particular chapter, Lord Kapila is actually summarizing the topmost process of disentangling one from the miseries of material existence and simultaneously working towards attaining the highest destination of developing pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by which one can actually transcend material nature and achieve the realm of Vaikuntha. What is the meaning of the word Vaikuntha? Kuntha means anxiety and Vai means where there is no. This material world is sometimes called as Kuntha. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita describes it as Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam, the abode of misery, and Ashashvata, temporary. But the scriptures exhort us that we should aim to reach the transcendental realm, which is Vaikuntha, beyond the effect of material misery, beyond the effect of material time, beyond the three modes of nature, beyond birth, old age, disease, and death. No hankering, no lamentation, no death. Akshara Dhama, that inexhaustible eternal abode. Tad Dhamam Paramam Mama. Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, na tad bhasete suryo na shashanko na pavakha yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam. Having gone where one never returns to this miserable material world, that is my supreme abode. So Lord Kapila begins describing the process of devotional service as the topmost means of attaining that perfection. There are many processes, but he says that the best one, the fastest one, the most efficient one is to take up to the process of bhakti of the Supreme Lord. And even better than taking to bhakti of the Lord is to be attached to the Lord's devotees. In fact, if one is attached to the Lord's devotees, it is described very wonderfully by Lord Kapila, how normally where attachment leads to suffering, but when that same attachment is focused on those who are great devotees of the Lord, the very same attachment leads one to spiritual perfection. Just as milk, when we eat excess milk, sometimes it causes diarrhea. But to cure diarrhea, one has to take yogurt. Yogurt is a recommended treatment for curing diarrhea. And what is yogurt? Yogurt is transformed milk. So milk in one form causes diarrhea. The same milk in another form cures that diarrhea. So attachment, when it is for matter, it entangles. The attachment for the Lord, or if attachment to the Lord is too far away, attachment to the Lord's devotees, which for conditioned souls like us is more easier, that becomes the cause of liberation. Krishna, Lord Kapila, who's Krishna, he explains the glories of such devotees and he explains how one can be easily liberated by being attached to such devotees, such sadhus, and he describes the qualities of these sadhus who are free from all attachments. Titikshava karunika surhada sarvadehinam ajata shatrava shanta sadhava sadhubhushana. Very beautiful, very famous verse. And then he says that all these qualities, peacefulness, equanimity, tolerance, friendliness to all living entities, ajata shatrava, not having any enemies, following the scriptures always, and so many wonderful qualities. But ultimately, the greatest quality of a sadhu is his staunch devotional service. Without deviation, he is taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Yes. So he is holding to Krishna's feet. So we hold to his feet. What happens? We become connected to Krishna. Correct? Yeah. Because the pure devotee is a transparent via medium to connect to Krishna. Krishna's grace is flowing through him. He's a superconductor of Krishna's grace. Correct? If there is an electric point, a live electric point, if you say, I will not touch the electric point, but if you take a copper wire, and say, I'm not touching, but I'm just touching this copper wire there. And if you are holding the other end of the copper wire, what will happen? You will equally get the shock. Why equally? Because it's a copper wire, it is a good conductor of electricity. So the great devotees, the pure devotees, the spiritual masters, they are like that conductor. They are, the grace of Krishna is passing through them. So if we connect to them, they are like the plug-in points in this material world, that whoever wants to be spiritually charged, they can connect. And they are the conduits of Krishna's grace. Sakshat dharitvena samasta shastre. The Guru Ashtak says they are practically direct representatives of the Lord. Sakshat dharitvena samasta shastre. They are the Lord's authorized representatives. So if we hold on to their lotus feet, the grace is flowing, we are connected to the Lord. That is the beauty. That's why Lord Shiva in the scriptures says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur Aradhana param tasmat parataram devi tadiyanam samarchanam. Of all forms of worship, the worship of Lord Vishnu is the topmost, but greater than the worship of Vishnu or Krishna is the worship or connection or deep attachment to those things which are connected to the Lord. His devotees, his prasad, his holy name, his deity. Through all of these, tadiya vastu. Of course, amongst all these, even though all of these are tadiya, the word tadiya is especially used in connection to the devotees. Because the prasad cannot run after you. The deity will not run after you. Correct? Tulsi will not run after you. Ganga will not run after you. But the devotee will run after you to give you grace of Krishna. They are authorized agents on behalf of the Lord who will go door to door, person to person, giving everybody an opportunity on behalf of the Lord to connect. So such devotees, Lord Kapila is saying that they are constantly engaged in hearing and chanting. And this is continuously echoed. We discussed this last week also, Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, Tathentascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha, in the 10th chapter. Then he also describes Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakriti mashrita. Sorry, what is there's another verse where Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantasya dridhavrataha namasyantasya mam bhakta nitya yukta upasate. Those who are properly and fully connected to me, nitya yukta means always connected. There are some yogis who can connect to the Lord only when they are in meditation. Otherwise, they are not fully quite connected. They have to do their pranayam, do the pratyahar, and then focus their mind and become absorbed in samadhi to be able to focus on the Lord. But if they are out of their samadhi and going about doing their other things, they cannot always be connected. But the bhaktas, they are nitya yukta. They are connected always. The only way to always be connected with someone, when you are not necessarily in physical proximity with them, is when you are actually deeply attached or deeply in love with that person. Isn't it? Correct? Even in the material world, we see this. When a boy or a girl is madly in love, then irrespective of the distance, irrespective of what the person is doing throughout the day, the thought of the beloved is always in the mind. Nitya Yukta. So devotee is like that. And what is the symptom of the Nitya Yukta? Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. They're always talking about me, chanting my glories, discussing about me, always offering the obeisances. Namasyantascha Mam Bhaktya Nitya Yukta Upasate. They are always worshipping me like that. So Krishna is very clear throughout the Gita and the Bhagavad. What is the standard or the behavior of those who are the topmost connection, those who have the topmost connection with him? He's not describing the Himalayan yogis. He's not describing the ascetics. He's not describing those who have lot of scriptural knowledge. All these things are good, but the culmination of all knowledge, the culmination of all austerities, the culmination of all yoga practices must conclude in devotional service to the Lord. It's a very beautiful verse in the scriptures. I forget which Purana it is from. Verse is very beautiful. Aradhito yadi hari tapasa tatha kim. Na aradhito yadi hari tapasa tatha kim. Antar bahir yadi hari tapasa tatha kim. Na antar bahi yadi hari tapasa tatha kim. Very beautiful. It simply means if you're performing austerities, but the austerities are not leading you to develop love for Krishna, then what is the use of those austerities? And if you have love for Krishna already, is there really a need for a lot of austerities? So effectively what this means, the culmination, the goal of all spiritual practices ultimately develop that Nitya Yukta, always connected. So Kapila describes these kind of sadhus very, very beautifully. And in verse 25, which is where we are continuing this chapter's discussion from for today, very beautifully he describes summarily the qualities of these devotees. Sorry, not the qualities of the devotees, the effect that the association of such devotees produces. It says, Satam prasanga mama virya samvido bhavanti hritkarna rasayana katha tadjoshanadashvapavargavartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. That in the association of pure devotees. Now the question is, what is pure devotee? Pure devotee means that devotee, pure devotee has two levels. One is a pure devotee who has no material infection, fully purified and fully in the state of Krishna Prem. So such souls are very, 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 very rare to find. On earth, you can probably count on your fingers those who have reached that state. But Krishna's definition of pure devotee is a bit more liberal. And there is Shastric proof for that. So this is not just my opinion. I can quote many verses to that effect. We'll discuss that a little later. But let's understand what is that other category of pure devotees. That other category of pure devotees are those who are pure in their intention, desire, and sincere effort to attain pure devotional service. They may not yet be fully purified. They may still have their struggles. They may still have some contamination, but in their heart, they are very clear what is the ultimate goal of life. They are not performing bhakti to achieve some material benefit. They are not interested in bhukti, mukti, and siddhi. They want pure devotional service to Krishna, and their purpose of performing bhakti, their purpose of doing kirtan, japa, bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita is to work towards that goal of pure devotion. They are also considered by the Lord as pure devotees. Of course, the purer the devotee, definitely the benefit of that association is definitely more, needless to say. So what does this verse say? In the association of pure devotees, satam prasangam, what happens? Mama virya samvido. There is discussion and of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this kind of discussion, when it happens amongst devotees, all of whose hearts are dedicated to the Lord in love and in service, that kind of discussion is extremely enlivening. Yes? Yeah. For example, somebody goes to a COVID ward, where there are all COVID patients. Extremely dangerous, right? It's very infectious. Actually, you're not allowed to go. But if at all you go, you have to be thoroughly protected with a PPE suit so that you don't get infected. Because everywhere in the air, there will be this virus which can infect you. Similarly, in the association of those who are positively infected with bhakti, the energy of that devotion is so permeating that environment that whoever comes into that environment immediately becomes affected in a positive way. That the seed of faith in pure devotional service is sown and that seed grows. Bhavanti Rit Karana Rasayana Katha. And hearing Hari Katha in the association of such devotees is extremely pleasing. Not just to the ears, but to the heart. The heart becomes so satisfied. When the heart becomes satisfied in hearing Hari Katha, you must understand that we are being blessed with the gift of some faith in pure devotional service. That is the preliminary symptom. The preliminary symptom that we are developing some affinity to the Lord is when we are not repulsed by hearing about the Lord's glories, but we feel some affinity. It's pleasing to hear the Lord's glory. That's a wonderful blessing. And if one continues to be exposed in such an environment of hearing and chanting, then that little faith that one has invested, it grows. Right? Just like in a stock market, right? We buy a little bit of shares. Initially, we have to invest little capital. But when the market is booming, what happens? The little capital, with all the growth, it becomes bigger, becomes bigger, becomes bigger. And with the effect of compounding, it ultimately becomes huge. And after a few years, like Warren Buffett, they say they started with a small amount, but over a few decades, he made billions. Same thing with bhakti. We have a little capital of a little faith in the association of pure devotees, and we participate in that association. The nourishment that comes through the association of devotees in terms of hearing, chanting, service, that will nourish, and that faith blooms and grows, and one starts advancing on the path of liberation. And what is the symptom? How do we know we are advancing on the path of liberation? One can progressively realize that one is becoming free from material attachments initially. Those things which were attracting him so much earlier, attachment to money, attachment to beauty, attachment to comforts, attachment to being respected, honored, so many kinds of attachments. Slowly, those attachments, initially gross and later subtle, they also start loosening, becomes free. And one's attraction and attachment to Krishna gradually becomes fixed. Shraddha, then Rati. Shraddha means firm faith. Here the word Shraddha is actually referring to Nishtha. Not just a little faith, but a strong faith. Initially, after purification happens, the first step is strong faith, Nishtha. Then comes Rati, attachment to the Lord. And then Bhakti, Prema Bhakti. Anukramishati, step by step, one can go through that journey. One can see for himself how he's being nourished, just like the seed, when it is watered regularly, how it grows into a beautiful plant. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives that very beautiful example. How the seed of bhakti, when planted in the heart and watered regularly and taken care, grows into a huge plant which bears ultimately the fruit of Krishna Prem. So this is the summary of the process. So simple. He's essentially summarizing the whole process in this one verse. He says Krishna is great, but sometimes to develop attachment to Krishna is so difficult. So develop attachment for devotees. And what do you do with such devotees. You sit with them simply, nothing much you have to do. And they are always discussing, hearing and chanting about Krishna. You just participate in that hearing and chanting. What happens is that when we are in an association of devotees, the faith and love that the devotees have in the Lord, through that hearing, it gets transferred to us. Of course, that transfer doesn't mean that the devotee loses his love and faith and it gets transferred. Not in that sense. But like one lamp can light another lamp. Similarly, that innate love for Krishna, which is hidden as a potential in the heart of each one of us, can be ignited and reactivated by the flame of devotion which is in the heart of a great soul. It's very powerful. That's why scriptures very, very greatly emphasize lava matra sadhu sangha sadva siddhi hoy. Sadhu sangha sarva shastra koy, lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi hoy. Even by little association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection, because a little association can produce such a profound effect on the consciousness. If it is an intense association, it's very, very powerful. Very powerful. So this is the recommendation which Kapila Muni gives. And he says, when he associates like this, and when the sadhaka, the practitioner, when he carefully avoids engaging himself in the modes of material nature, serving the modes of material nature, essentially meaning trying to enjoy material nature, but rather he focuses on developing Krishna consciousness, and through detachment and renunciation, make sure that he's fixed on the path of yoga, on the path of connecting to the Lord. Very soon, in fact, in this very life, he achieves my association. Lord Kapila is saying my, because Lord Kapila is the Lord himself. Devahuti heard this. Devahuti was amazed. Wow. This bhakti is so powerful. This bhakti is so wonderful. She inquired, please tell me what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing. Please tell me something easy. I'm not very, advanced in a very intellectual understanding. I want to attain your lotus feet, O Lord, as soon as possible. Can you tell me what is the best, even within devotional service? Yes, amongst all yogic processes, devotional service is best. I understand that this whole process that you are describing, this whole mystic yoga process, is all aimed at gradually elevating and attaining, transcending material attachment. Please explain to me more about the nature of this yoga system also. Are there many ways to achieve God? Is there one way? Please explain to me how this works and what is ultimately the truth of this yoga process. But try to explain in a very simple way. Oh, my dear son Kapila, you are the Lord. But since you know everything and I am not very intellectual, don't make it very too highly philosophical. Give me the essence of what I need to understand, so that by understanding it, I can achieve perfection. And I'm sure you can do it, because you're the Lord. You'll be able to explain it perfectly. You are the knower of the Vedas perfectly. Vedaisya sarvairahame vedyo vedantakrit veda videva chaham. Krishna says in the Gita, I know perfectly the import of all the Vedas. So I will be able to understand and I will feel great happiness. So Kapila could understand that his mother is very, very sincere. And of course, being mother also, he was extra compassionate towards her. So she had done so much service for him. And the Lord always feels so indebted to his devotees. What to speak of somebody who has taken the position of his mother? Krishna is never forgetful of anything that any devotee does. If a devotee does something sincerely, Krishna never, ever, ever forgets. We may forget, but he doesn't forget. So he naturally felt very compassionate And Lord Kapila decided to explain to her the system of Sankhya philosophy, which is essentially a combination of bhakti as well as the mystic yoga process, which is combined in a way and which is understood in disciplic succession. So yoga, when it is practiced without bhakti, jnana, when it is practiced without bhakti, cannot actually deliver one. So it is very important to understand, and that is why Lord Kapila is very emphatic that he is describing bhakti yukta Sankhya philosophy. So Sankhya philosophy, like what we have discussed earlier, in very simple words, is a detailed categorical analysis of all aspects of existence, right from matter up to the most subtlest, ultimately going up to the absolute truth, and ultimately coming to the realization of the ultimate source of everything, having understood which one ultimately surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have discussed this in some of the previous classes. Krishna also discusses the same thing in the fifth chapter, I believe, of the Bhagavad Gita. Sankhya yogo pratak balaha pravadanti na panditaha ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yaha pashyati sa pashyati. That ultimately the goal is to come to pure devotional service. Some prefer to take an analytical approach to start with, and some directly want to start with the linking process of devotional service. So he starts describing the Sankhya system. Please understand, the Sankhya system also ultimately aims at pure devotional service. But it starts with a philosophical analysis of this material nature, leading to understand ultimately who we are and what is the ultimate source of this material nature as well as the soul. If you remember in the Bhagavad Gita, we have been discussing the 7th chapter. Krishna starts the knowledge of the absolute truth by describing these two. It's very similar, isn't it? Krishna starts in the 7th chapter by saying, Bhumi Rapur Anlo Vayu Kham Mano Buddhirevacha Hankar Ityam Me Bhanna Prakriti Rashtada. These are the 8 categories of my material energy. Apareyam itastvanyam prakritim viddhi me param jiva bhuta mahavaho yedam dharyate jagat. But beyond these 8 elements is my superior nature, the living entity. And understand, Arjuna, both of these are coming from me, that I am the ultimate source. And then Krishna goes on and on and on. So that is what Sankhya is ultimately meant to understand. Of course, through much, much more deeper technical analysis. But here, for the sake of his mother, he is giving a more simple overview of the whole system. So he starts by explaining, Lord Kapila, he says, Mother, please understand, all living entities have their senses, which are all grouped around the mind. Now, all these senses, each of the senses are representations of the various devatas. And the mind is actually a representative of the Supreme Lord. Because all the senses are ultimately converging in the mind, they are actually serving the mind. So if you analyze and understand this properly, my dear mother, all the senses are ultimately meant to serve the Supreme Lord. It is the mind's natural duty to serve. That is why the living entity, the soul, must always engage in the activity of service to the Supreme Personality of God. Krishna is also known as Rishikesha. Rishika means senses and Isha means Lord. So the Lord, the Supreme Lord, is ultimately the source and the master of all our senses. And that is why it is said that all the senses ultimately belong to him and they are meant for his pleasure. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. It's another very wonderful definition of bhakti which is given. What is that? Rishikena. Rishikena means by the senses. Rishikesha Sevanam. Service to Rishikesh is called bhakti. So when we use our mind and senses to serve the Lord of the mind and senses, that process is known as bhakti. Very beautiful definition. So Lord Kapila is telling, please understand, mother, the mind, the senses, they are all belonging to the Lord and meant to be engaged in his service. But now what is happening? They're all, without realizing that the Lord is Rishikesh, he is the master. We think I am the master and enjoyer. And on that illusion, we think we can be happy by pleasing our false ego and the material senses. We forget to serve the Lord. And that is why we suffer. So the simple process of yoga is to use our body, our mind, our senses in serving Krishna. But mind you, it's very important that that service to Krishna must be done without any material motive. Ahaituki, very important. And when this kind of bhakti is performed, which is without material motivation, that bhakti is so powerful, it is so wonderful, it is so pleasing and elevating that that kind of bhakti is even higher than mukti. Mukti is also nothing in front of it. In fact, the scriptures say that for a bhakta, for a devotee, to achieve mukti is very simple. Very easily he can achieve mukti. In fact, he is not even chasing after mukti. Mukti, one great pure devotee says, since I have been worshipping Lord Krishna with pure devotion, Mukti is standing, Mukti Devi is standing at my doorstep, saying, I am here to serve you, to liberate you from all material existence and from the cycle of birth and that. But he says, no, no, I'm not interested. I'm busy serving Krishna. Don't bother me. Because serving Krishna is so much more blissful, so much more pleasurable. Kaivalyan narakayate tidashapur akasha pushpayate durdandendriya kala sarpapatali prothadadam strayate vishwam purna sukhayate vidhi mahendradi kitayate yat karunya kataksha vaibhavotam gauraya evastumah. Whoever has received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna, what happens to them? They experience such a beautiful bliss that even the bliss of mukti, of merging into the Lord's impersonal effulgence, seems to them like going to hell. If we were to go to hell, the kind of repulsion we will have with a hell environment. Just to give some idea, it's not that Brahman is hellish. That is not the point. The point is just comparing our experience of hell, how much repulsed we will be. Similarly, those who are pure devotees, for them, the idea of not serving Krishna but rather merging into God's effulgence and not serving him is like hell, being in hell. That is the kind of gulf of difference between the experience. Kaivalyan narakayate dashapura akasha pushpaya. This is a very beautiful verse by Prabodhananda Saraswati. I don't have time to discuss this verse. Very beautiful, profound verse. But the key point is that he who develops pure devotion to the Lord, for him, whether it's going to heaven, whether it is enjoying material opulences in this world or mukti, bhukti, siddhi seem insignificant in compared to bhakti. So this is essentially glorifying the attainment of bhakti to give what kind of a powerful positive experience it is. Of course, we can go on discussing this theoretically, but for us, we have neither experience of mukti nor bhakti, so we can only talk about it theoretically. But at least let us accept it theoretically first, so that at least we do not chase after the wrong thing. Eventually, we will be able to realize this. Kaivalyan narakayate tidashapur akasha pushpayate. Very beautiful. And he goes on to describe not only bhakti is higher than mukti, but this bhakti is so powerful. How does it give one mukti? Because mukti involves dissolving all one karma and one subtle body, so that one doesn't take birth again in this material nature. How does bhakti achieve that? It is said in verse 33, Kapila explains that bhakti is so powerful that bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the sukshma sharira, the linga sharira of the living entity without having to take shelter of any other separate process. The bhakta doesn't have to separately do yoga, separately do meditation, separately do tapasya to dissolve his karma, to dissolve his subtle body. No, the process of bhakti itself is so powerful. And the example is given just like when you put food into your stomach, the digestive fire in the stomach digests all the food that we eat. Whatever we eat, it digests, it digests, it digests. Huh? And it disappears, it assimilates it. And similarly, bhakti is so powerful that whatever karmas we may have, whatever contamination we may have, they're all burnt away and disintegrated and dissolved and digested. Just like food is digested in the stomach. Very beautiful example. And actually, the pure devotee, Gangotri Mata is asking, what is the meaning of Linga Sharira? Linga Sharira is the more subtlest form of subtle body. There are actually three kinds of bodies on top of the soul. One is the gross body, which is what we can see. Inside it is a subtle body, which is made of mind intelligence. And there is a Linga Sharira. Linga Sharira is the most subtlest part of the body, which is mainly made of the false ego and very subtle parts of the mind and intelligence. And it is said the karma and all our impressions and our sense of false identity is basically rooted in this Linga Sharira. It's the deepest part of our conditioning. So essentially, to become free from the material world, one doesn't simply have to become free from the gross body, not even simply free from the sukshma body, but ultimately free from the Linga Sharira, which is the finest covering the real nature of the soul. So Lord Kapila goes on to say that for one who is attached to my bhakti, because he's experiencing such bliss, he never desires to become one in my Brahman effulgence. Of course, no one can actually become one with God in the sense of becoming God, but there are some devotees, sorry, not some devotees, some yogis who aspire to become one with God, but of course, they cannot become God, but they can merge into the effulgence of God, which is like merging into God, but not into God's body. They don't become God, but they can temporarily merge into God's existence in terms of his effulgence, which is spread everywhere. But devotees never desire that. A devotee always prefers an unflinching devotee, an advanced devotee always desires to continuously hear about me, chant about me, and render service to me. Why? Because a pure devotee always wants to experience the bliss of devotional service. The taste and the pleasure that a devotee gets in rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead exceeds the bliss that the impersonalist gets in experiencing union with the Brahma Jyoti. Just like we just discussed, Kaivalya Narakayate, that is the kind of feeling that they get. So Tukaram Maharaj, one very great saint from Maharashtra, who was a great devotee of Lord Vitthal, Pandurang. It is said he was initiated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a dream. So he says a very beautiful verse. He says it in Marathi. I don't remember the verse, so I'm unable to recollect it. But he says that I do not want to become sugar. Rather than becoming sugar, I want to taste sugar. What is the point of becoming sugar? Tasting sugar is so much more nicer. So devotees, rather than trying to become God, they want to taste the beauty, taste the relationship of serving Him, taste that bliss of serving Him. And in fact, the scriptures say that the joy that the devotees get in serving Krishna is so sweet, so wonderful, so great that Krishna, who's even though he's the enjoyer, the object of all devotion, the recipient of all devotion, the beneficiary of all devotion, that supreme absolute truth starts feeling, oh, my devotees seem to be enjoying something so wonderful. I am missing out on this wonderful experience of tasting me. Tasting meaning tasting the joy of that bhakti. Especially so when he sees Radharani. Because Radharani is the highest embodiment of that love. And Krishna can clearly see that the pleasure she is getting in serving him is greater than the pleasure he gets in being served. Yes? See, that is the beauty of the concept of seva. In this world, we all think that, if we are served, we will be happy, and the person who's serving, he must be the troubled person. He is serving and I am enjoying. But from a spiritual perspective, the bliss that the devotee gets in serving is higher than the bliss that the Lord experiences in receiving the service. And this is a very deep spiritual principle, which is echoed across the scriptures. And this experience is so sweet, so wonderful, so ecstatic, and so attractive that even God himself becomes attracted to this principle. What is it that is so wonderful about me that my devotees get so excited? What is their experience when they see me? What is their experience of my beauty? What is the experience of their love? What is the happiness of their love? God becomes greedy to taste it. Correct? Because we cannot taste loving ourselves, right? So God has to become his devotee to experience that. So I am mentioning this, and of course, that is why Krishna takes the form of Lord Chaitanya as a devotee. So he can actually experience that. That is actually the secret of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Radharani, who becomes a devotee to worship Krishna, so that he can experience what it is to become Krishna. To become a devotee of Krishna. And after he does that, he finds this is so much better. So sometimes people wonder, is God more fortunate or we more fortunate? Of course, God is always in his own position, the supreme enjoyer. But we must understand what we are given is also such a wonderful, sweet experience that even God hankers. Even the Supreme Lord becomes purchased by the devotion of his devotees. And then he goes on to describe the characteristics of such devotees who have unflinching devotion. Lord Kapila says, "Oh my mother, my devotees are always seeing my smiling face of my transcendental form, and especially my form, which is eyes like the rising morning sun." Krishna's eyes, they have a reddish tinge, especially at the corners. Look like a morning rising sun. They are fond of seeing my beautiful forms, my spiritual forms, because Krishna's forms are not material. They are spiritual in all my forms. They are always merciful. They are benevolent, and all these devotees like to interact with me, to speak with me. And when they see this form of mine, and especially when they interact, especially the advanced devotees, when they see directly my transcendental form and interact and hear my words, they practically lose all their consciousness. So absorbing is the ecstasy of interaction with the Lord. And this is not just at the level of pure devotion or prema, but even at the level of sadhana. Even the sadhaka who has faith and sincerity, when they perform sincere devotional service, it is very easy for them to come to the conclusion that the experience of that devotional service is qualitatively so much better than even the best of material enjoyments. Those who practice devotional service sincerely, even for some time, especially if their bhakti is ahaituki, without material motivation. If it is with material motivation, this realization is difficult to get. So if some of you are practicing bhakti or the limbs of bhakti for some time and you are still not getting this realization, then we have to introspect to see that probably we are not doing ahaituki. Somewhere we are doing bhakti with some material motivation. Because when bhakti is done ahaituki, without material motivation, very quickly, even in a neophyte stage, one can experience a kind of happiness which is distinctly so different from, in quality from all material happiness. And by that nature itself of that happiness, even in the neophyte stage, one feels a sense of liberation from all material miseries. That is a very strong experience that devotees get. And that is why they always feel, I always want to remain in this association. I always want to continue hearing and chanting. I always want to continue rendering service. Satam prasangam mama vidya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana katha. Very beautiful. So these devotees are completely absorbed. Their senses are free from attachment to matter because they've already experienced a higher taste. Raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Even though there is some taste of happiness in the material senses, but having experienced the higher taste of bhakti, these devotees, they are no longer attracted to the lower things much. Even if it is taken away, if they have nothing else, no material happiness, they are just happy hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. That is another simple way to measure our status of spiritual advancement. So being absorbed in devotional service itself is being transcendental to material nature. In fact, the Shastras are very emphatic that when a devotee is engaged in bhakti, even a neophyte devotee is engaged in bhakti, and especially if that bhakti is without a material motivation, then that bhakti immediately takes one to the transcendental platform. As long as one is engaged in that bhakti, one has actually become transcendental to material nature. It's a very, very deep and profound point. It's not so easy to understand and realize, but Prabhupada is very emphatic. The Acharyas are very emphatic. This is the truth. That absorption in devotional service, as long as the devotee is absorbed in devotional service, he is in a transcendental position. Our sad situation is we cannot remain absorbed. We cannot remain absorbed in transcendental devotional service. So it's very easy for the devotee to attain liberation. Because for him, the very activity of being engaged in devotional service is itself being absorbed in transcendence. So it's so simple and natural. So in this way, Lord Kapila is saying, being completely absorbed in my thoughts, the devotee is so happy, he neither wants to go even to the highest of the material planets like Satyaloka. He doesn't aspire for the material siddhis, the 8 siddhis. What to speak of that? He's so satisfied in serving me that he's not even anxious that when I will achieve Vaikuntha. This is something very interesting. He's not even anxious to go back home, back to Godhead. It's not that going back home, back to Godhead is bad or undesirable. Not like that, of course. Ultimately, that's our home. So we all want to go there. But the devotee who's pure in heart is not anxious for that. Why? Because what he's going to be doing there, he's already doing here and he's fully absorbed. By his absorption, the devotee is not feeling the pangs of material energy because the modes of material nature are not acting on him. Ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya. Whoever worships me in devotion, maya metam taranti. They become transcendental to material nature. So that is the truth which the Lord is emphasizing. And even amongst attainments in the spiritual realm, it is said that there are four kinds of liberation: Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, and Sarshti. I'll not take much time if I go into that discussion, it will be a long discussion. But even amongst those, apart from actually rendering service, the devotees are not actually even much interested in these liberations by themselves, even though they don't reject the devotional liberations, but especially they're not particularly keen on the Sarupya. Salokya is fine because that gives them an opportunity to serve, but opportunity to serve can be here also. So the devotees are never anxious, even within the spiritual world. And that is why they're always peaceful and happy. Mukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakale Ashanta, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Atayeva Shanta. Because everybody is hankering after something or the other. And that is why they're always disturbed and not peaceful. But those who are pure devotees of the Lord, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama, is without any material desires. And that is why he is very peaceful. And Lord Kapila says, my mother, don't think that my devotees are bereft of the blessings that come with material attainments or mystic perfections or all these other things. No. In fact, in essence, they get all of that and much, much more. They are never the losers. One should not think, oh, he got bhakti, but couldn't get this, he couldn't get that. No, because within the experience of bhakti, everything else is automatically achieved. But the devotee never separately endeavors. So the devotees are never the losers. And the opulence, the spiritual opulence that the devotees acquire, because this material opulence, which is achieved through the process of bhakti or siddhi, those will ultimately go away when the body perishes. But the spiritual opulence that the devotees attain, that never perishes because it is spiritual in nature. And the devotees develop a relationship with me. That relationship is undying. That relationship is not like a material relationship which ends with death. It goes on eternally. So you can imagine whatever opulence and relationship the devotees attain remains with them for eternity. They can never be deprived of them. If the Lord thinks of me, if my devotee thinks of me as their son, then I will eternally reciprocate with them like that. Not like a material son that eventually either the parents or the child has to die. No, this relationship is a eternal relationship. And I take charge of such a devotee of mine. Especially those who give up all other aspirations, those who don't have any other shelter, and with unflinching devotional service, those who take shelter of me, without caring for going to heavenly planets, without caring to become happy in this world through wealth, family, success, home, or any kind of material relationships. I take the responsibility to deliver them from the cycle of birth and death and take them to the other side of samsara, which is my supreme abode. Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham aham samuddarta mrityu samsara vartmani bhavamina achirat partha maya veshita chetasam. Those whose minds are fixed like this on me, I become the swift deliverer for them from the ocean of birth and death. I take responsibility because they're depending, correct? Just like a child who's so dependent on the parent takes all responsibility for the child's protection and care. So the devotee who surrenders to the Lord takes full charge of such a devotee. So a devotee never needs to be fearful of samsara. A devotee doesn't have to be taking any separate extra steps to free himself from his karma. He doesn't have to do anything extra to become materially happy. He doesn't have to do anything extra to destroy his subtle body or his karma or anything. All he has to is to take full shelter of me by taking shelter of the process of bhakti in the association of devotees. Remember, mother, what I started telling you with? That's all. And the simple way is hold on to the association of my devotees, become attached to them. Becoming attached to devotees is not just about being attached to the physical form, of course, that is also nice, but ultimately being attached to learning from them and following their instructions. So such devotees have nothing to fear because ultimately this whole world is going on under my directions. I am supreme. The wind is blowing because of fear out of me. The sun is shining under my instructions. Indra is sending rains being scared of me. Fire burns out of fear of me. Everything is happening under my control and direction. Nobody disobeys me. So why the devotees have to fear when they have taken shelter of me? I am controlling everything. They don't have to bother about anybody or anything else. In terms of managing their happiness and their deliverance, I am fully capable and competent to manage everything. That is why, understanding this, those who are devotees, these great yogis who are equipped with proper knowledge about me, and because of that proper knowledge, being detached from trying to find happiness in matter, they engage with firm determination in the process of devotional service for their eternal benefit, not for temporary benefit. And the path of that eternal benefit is to take shelter of my lotus feet. And as such, by taking that shelter, they become qualified to enter into the kingdom of God, where they can live with me eternally without any fear. And understanding this, my mother, that this is the best, those who are actually wise, they understand that bhakti is the only means for attaining the ultimate goal of spiritual perfection. And that is why such people who have this proper understanding, they intensely take shelter of the process of devotional service. Intensely. Because they know that this is all I need to do. They don't think, oh, now I'm doing bhakti of Krishna, maybe I should also do some yajnas for this devata, maybe I should also go here, maybe I should do some this kind of other processes and other things. Shraddha, there's a beautiful definition of faith in the scriptures. It says, Shraddha Shabde Vishwasa Kohe Sudruda Nischay Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hai. That Shraddha or faith means having that intense conviction that if I simply take shelter of Krishna fully through the process of devotional service, automatically all other objectives will get served automatically without any other extraneous endeavor. Why? Because Krishna is the source of everything. And like Krishna explains here in this chapter also, I am ultimately controlling and driving everything. I will fix everything. If you water the root of the tree, automatically all the parts of the tree get satisfied. If you feed the stomach, automatically all the limbs of the body get nourished. So my dear mother, those who understand this science properly, they take shelter of me with firm determination, exclusively of the process of bhakti. Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita, Jarana Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatantiyate Brahma Tadvidu Krishnam Karma Adhyatma Chakhilam. That those who want to be free from this miserable state and having understood that, they take full shelter of me, Mam Ashritya Yatantiye. They can actually understand transcendence perfectly and fully and achieve the transcendental realm. So that brings us to the end of this chapter. Thank you very much. Tantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Opening the floor to any questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Amit Prabhu.
Couple of questions, Prabhuji. So, at one point, you mentioned that the bhaktas don't really aspire for mukti. So in the broad sense, mukti refers to liberation, right? So is it just liberation, where the soul goes beyond the material world and merges into the impersonal Brahman, or does mukti also include going beyond the impersonal Brahman to the Vaikuntha planets? Because I quite didn't understand that why the bhakta doesn't aspire for mukti, because I thought we are doing all this to get out of the cycle of birth and death, right?
No, we are not.
No, so at the neophyte stage, there won't be so much.
Correct. So that is why, yeah, you're right. So right now, maybe many of us may be having that thinking that is our initial motivation, because initial motivation is freedom. But as one continues in the association of devotees, gradually the motivation gets purified. And the motivation changes from the motivation of liberation, which is mukti. Liberation means what? Liberation means I want to be free from all suffering, which is still, it's a good desire, but it is still a selfish desire. It is still a desire to be free, and ultimately the word mukti is referring to, in a more broader sense, to be free from the cycle of birth and death, because we know as long as one is in the cycle, one has to continue to suffer, no matter how wonderful the situation may be. So in that sense, that may be the initial impetus. But like what we discussed, that when a devotee is engaged with a pure heart in hearing and chanting, in the association of devotees, that experience is so wonderful that the experience of mukti is already contained within that, because the devotee becomes transcendental to material miseries when he is absorbed in the Lord's devotional service. So what we are saying is that the devotee is not separately aspiring for mukti. And that is not his objective also, because the objective of the devotee is to serve Krishna, and by serving him, the devotee automatically experiences bliss and he automatically achieves the result of mukti without a separate endeavor. So in that sense, the devotee is not, his primary objective is not liberation. And the other point is that when we talk about liberation, oftentimes the connotation of that liberation is that particular spiritual practitioner often wants to merge into the impersonal aspect of God when they talk about mukti. So mukti without bhakti, so if you become free from the cycle of birth and death, but you don't have bhakti for God, where will you go? Yeah, what happens to the soul? Yeah. So that is what is known as the impersonal liberation. That means that the soul becomes free from the gross, subtle, and the linga sharira. So it doesn't go into the cycle of birth and death, but it cannot go to the spiritual world of Vaikuntha because it has not developed devotion. So where does it go? So between the material and the spiritual world is the impersonal effulgence of the Lord, the Brahma Jyoti. So the soul goes and merges into the Brahma Jyoti, that unlimited light. The soul is a spark of light, a Chitkan. It merges there. But that is not ultimately the eternal position of the soul. So eventually the soul has to, from that space, either come down or continue his journey upwards by taking shelter of pure devotion. So yes, I mean, in one sense, what you're saying, maybe in our current state of spiritual evolution, we may not yet be fully free from the desire for mukti, but at least for us, of course, desire to be free from cycle of birth and death is also a very good impetus initially for spiritual practitioners to take shelter of the Lord. So in that sense, it is not, bad by itself. But what is important is that those who are sadhana bhaktas, when their conception is that I want to become free from the cycle of birth and death, so I can without distraction serve the Supreme Lord in the spiritual world. They are not simply using God to become free. They are not simply doing bhakti so that they can ultimately become God and merge into Brahman. No. They want to be free from the material world so that they can, without any disturbance, distraction, and suffering, experience the sweetness and the spiritual rapture of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead eternally. Does that help? So
Yes,
not
Prabhuji.
so
Yes.
not desiring mukti here, at least in the most basic sense for us, means not desiring to become one with the impersonal effulgence of the Lord in the least, at least for us. Yeah. But in the earlier stages of devotion, definitely the desire to be free from the cycle of birth and death will be there. It is natural. But the devotee looks at it differently. He looks at it as a distraction to serving the Lord without deviation.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. Got it. Another technical question, Prabhuji, on Linga Sharir, which you mentioned during the course of the class.
Yeah.
So when the soul transmigrates from one body to another, does the Linga Sharir also go with the soul?
Of course.
Because
Yes.
that's where the karma and impressions reside, right?
Yes.
So Linga Sharir goes to the next body.
Yes.
Okay.
Very much. The Linga Sharir is the most closest covering. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Any other questions? So the bottom line of this chapter is that the process of bhakti is the necessary and sufficient process to achieve the highest spiritual perfection. And when you take to this process, you automatically get the fruits and the benefits of all other spiritual processes of any sort, spiritual or religious processes. One who, and there are many verses in across the Gita, Bhagavatam, and other scriptures which emphasize this, that he who takes to the devotion of the Lord is never bereft of the benefit that the tapasvis, jnanis, dhyanis get, the karmis also from the various rituals. He gets the result of all that plus much more. So the bhakta is always in the most safe position. So he gets everything that the benefit of everything that everybody else does, plus he gets much more. And on top of that, he is protected, guided personally by the Lord himself. So what can be a better system than taking shelter of the Lord? So that is the key point. And the best way to take shelter of the Lord is to take shelter of the association of pure devotees, okay, like all of you. So Prashant ji is asking a question. Let me see what the question is. If a person is listening to Srimad Bhagavatam out of interest, but not as Krishna Bhakta, would that be called as Sankhya Yoga? So this topic we'll be discussing in the Bhagavad Gita class. So Krishna is categorizing this kind of a devotee in the 7th chapter. That's the next shloka that we are going to read in the Bhagavad Gita class. So I will keep the suspense for that. So that is not exactly Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is a bit different. But you're talking about a jigyasu, somebody who has interest, who is inquisitive, but not yet a devotee. So even if a person, the simple or the short answer is, even if a person comes to the association of devotee out of inquisitiveness, curiosity, what are these guys up to? Huh? What is Amit up to nowadays? This Amit Shetty, he was the CFO in a big company. Now what is he listening to Gita and Bhagavatam? I became very curious. So they decided, okay, let me come and check out what he's up to. So somebody comes out of inquisitiveness. If they are sincere and open-hearted, not envious, not offensive, then in the association of devotees, if that association is representing the pure message, then it is very natural for the heart to become attracted. And it is very natural for the seed of pure devotion to be sown, even for those who are not seeking it. Okay, that is the glory of association of devotees. Even for those who are not seeking it. So even if somebody doesn't want bhakti, but they simply are connected to the association of devotees. Just like if you go to a COVID ward, you don't want COVID, you will still get COVID. Because you will get infected in that environment, whether you want it or you don't want it. So that is the power of the association of devotees. Satam tu sangam sakalam prasute. The association of devotees gives one all spiritual perfection. That is the verdict of the scriptures. Prashantji, does it answer your question for now? We'll discuss more in detail. Okay, any other questions?
So Prabhuji, tomorrow is Ekadashi, right?
Yes, yes. Tomorrow is Apara Ekadashi, so please observe as far as possible. And the subsequent Ekadashi on 21st June is the Bhima Ekadashi or the Pandav Nirjal Ekadashi, which is recommended to be observed without water, whoever can, according to their capacity. So tomorrow is Ekadashi, so abstain from grains and try to absorb yourself in more spiritual practices. Okay, so thank you all very much. If there is no other question or comment, I'll see you all on Wednesday. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.